And now, back to Around the Kid with Joe Gansas.
We are back, 563-999-3029. Once again, we say thank you to the legend, Rod Morgenstein. 563-999-3029. Love this part of the show. Just love to have a second guest always on the show. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to Around the Kid, Joel Maitoza. Joe Gansas on Around the Kid. What's up, brother?
Hey, can you hear me? How you doing?
Hey, brother. How you doing tonight? What's going on, Joel?
Excellent, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for wanting to be on the show, first of all. It means a lot to me that people want to be on the show, and it's just great stuff. Rod Morgenstein and Joel Maitoza, people ask me, well, you have this guy and this guy. To me, on my show, you need to do one thing: hold two sticks in your hands. If you're a drummer, I have you on the show. How you doing, brother? What's going on?
Very good, man. Just working this new album and playing my butt off as always, you know.
Yeah, we are live. 563-999-3029. Joel Maitoza. Let's get to it. I always like to paint a picture and go back a little bit, many years. You know, what made you want to hit things with sticks?
Well, let's see. If we're going way back, my mom used to play piano when I was very little, and she used to sit me there on the piano bench when she would play Burt Bacharach songs or whatever the case may be, and I'd be pounding on the keys and came from somewhat of a musical family, so she got me involved in the Yamaha School of Music when I was about 3 years old. And I actually learned, how to play the keyboard and music theory and things like that, and I got my music degree when I was 6. So around that age, my grandparents bought me a little Sears special, drum kit with the paper drum heads and these little wooden sticks. And my uncle put on a Beatles tune, and I destroyed the kit in 30 seconds, broke all the heads. So they said, well, maybe we need to get him a little better drum kit. So my parents got me a 4-piece Ludwig kit that I wish I still own today, but I don't. And I learned on that, and my mom got me into taking drum lessons with this professor from a local college here in town. And he was really into jazz, super big jazz head, and he actually wanted to teach me how to learn how to read music, drum charts and stuff, specifically jazz. And I really wasn't into that. I was more into, listening to Zeppelin and Blue Oyster Cult and stuff like that. And I wanted to learn, the cool stuff. I wasn't into jazz at that time, at that age. And eventually I'm glad he taught me all that stuff, but we made a deal, and in my hour lesson, or whatever, he would give me the first half hour. I'd have to learn how to read music, and he would instruct me. And then the other half hour, I could bring in a record, and he'd teach me how to play the beat, for whatever song I was interested in. So right. That kind of set me off to learning how to do, different beats and fills and things of that nature. And then, it kind of took off from there. I went on tour with a college percussion group when I was about 11 years old, and did the music for summer stock theater and things like that, during the summer when I was off of school, and started playing with cover bands, and it just kind of took off.
Joel, you mentioned before somebody who I love. I'm a big Burt Bacharach fan. So many great hits, and I am most likely I'm a metalhead in the 80s, but since then I like everything from Sinatra to Yanni. I just like everything in between. I love everything from reggae to old-time jazz. But I think back at my roots, and I think as your mother might have been educating you, Joel, I think my mother might have been educating me, not even knowing. Listen to Mac Davis and Anne Murray, and I love John Denver today because of what was going on in the house. Do you feel like that's where the roots came from? Because to me, I love John Denver today because of my mother.
You know, absolutely, and I didn't realize it until later on in life because, you know, it's almost like in your subconscious because she's cleaning the house, she's vacuuming and doing whatever and dusting, and she's listening to Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass and, you know, Dionne Warwick and, you know, all this different Boots Randolph and all this different stuff, and it's really, you know, kind of it embeds itself in your brain, all that orchestration and that melodic stuff, because, you know, you're not thinking about it at the time. You're just thinking of it as the music that's enveloping the household, you know, while she's doing her daily chores. But it's almost like a teaching lesson. You know, it's almost it's almost like they're teaching you, you know, what they like. And that was another great thing about my parents was they came from, you know, the background of, you know, of seeing no color. It's like they would listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they would listen to Miles Davis, and they would listen to all this other stuff that, you know, I just thought it was cool music. You know, it didn't matter what style it was or, you know, where it came from or anything like that. It was just always kind of enveloped in the household. And because of that, I think a lot of that, you know, just kind of stuck into my brain.
What kind of town are we talking about growing up in Escondido, California?
Very kind of suburban, typical suburban neighborhood. You know, a lot of things you could do back then that you couldn't do now. You know, it was one of those situations where you're out riding bikes with friends. You came home when the street lights came on, you know, when it was dinner time, you know. And it was just kind of like an all-American vibe, you know. I mean, the strange thing that I noticed was because I started playing music so early was when I started grade school, I figured everybody else could play an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went into school and I started making friends, you know, in like second and third grade, I'd be like, well, you know, let's go over to my house and play. And I had a guitar that belonged to my grandfather, and I had a keyboard, and I had my mom's piano, and I had my drums, and, you know, tambourines and shakers. And it's like, okay, you grab the guitar, you grab the keyboard, and, you know, we'll try to play a song. And these kids didn't know how to play an instrument. You know, it was like they had no idea. I just assumed everybody knew how to play an instrument because I did it all the time. So, and came from a musical family. So it was kind of a strange thing. But then, you know, they all wanted to go play kickball and baseball and football, and I was at home playing my drums, you know, because that was my thing. You know, that's what I loved.
Absolutely. Guys, we are live right now on Around the Kit, 563-999-3029. Joe Maitoza, excellent drummer. You know, so much to get to you, but I like that we're talking about growing up because it was an early education for us. Let's go a little bit into 24/7, so some great stuff on those albums. How did that come into fruition, 24/7?
You know, they were together. I was actually a fan of the band before I ever got in the band. They had 2 albums out before me, Harder Than You and Gumbo Millennium. And I was in a band called Gangland with Spacey T and Stanley E, who used to be in a band called Sound Barrier. And I was into that band, and I ended up going to an album release party for the Gumbo Millennium album in L.A., and Tracy, the guitar player, Spacey T, took me to it. And so we went to the party, and he introduced me to Jimmy Hazel, and we talked for a little bit, and then fast forward a few months later, I run into Jimmy again at the NAMM show out in Anaheim. And I had, you know, been out of Gangland now for a couple months, and I was looking for a new project and a new band to join, and I was doing auditions. And I ran into Jimmy, and I was like, hey, you know, I know you got a drummer. I know you're on tour right now, but, you know, if you know of anybody that's looking for a drummer, here's my demo tape, you know, here's my bio and stuff. And that was before the age of computers, you know, where you just look something up online. And so I was like, you know, pass it along to somebody if you hear of anybody looking for a drummer. And actually at that album release party, Primus opened up for them. So we were talking to a bunch of people there and hooking up with a lot of people. So anyways, so Jimmy calls me a few days later at about 1:00 in the morning, and he's like, "Hey, Joel, it's Jimmy. Our drummer and singer quit on stage at the show the other night, and we're looking for a drummer. Do you think you'd be interested?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm already a fan of the band. I already know all the songs off the first 2 albums." So he was like, "Can you record any of it?" And I was like, "Yeah." So he goes, "Do you have your drums set up?" I said, "Yeah." So he said, "Go play 30 seconds of Grandma Dynamite, 30 seconds of Spill My Guts, 30 seconds of, Superhero Worship, whatever, 4 songs." So I call him back, play 30 seconds of this song, 30 seconds of this song, 30 seconds of this song. He listened to it. He said, "You got the gig." So I owe a lot of it to AT&T because if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have gotten the gig because they're in New York and I'm in California. So I flew out there and we did we played through the set a couple times and we finished the tour. And, the great thing about that band and why I was so ecstatic about playing with them is kind of reverting back to what we were discussing earlier is they cover all different styles of music. They're primarily a rock band or a metal band, but they play funk, they play R&B, they play reggae, they play metal, they play, jazz. They have, jazz feels all over the place. And it's that gamut that really turned me onto the band and got me excited about it because back in those days, and it's still true today, is most, bands kind of have to write the same kind of material. The record label wants to hook them up with a producer, and they got to have a hit single, and they got to all sound the same. And that's what I loved about them so much was they could go into, a major studio or be on a label. They didn't have a producer sitting there saying, well, it's got to be like this. They didn't say, well, we're not going to release the album because we don't hear a hit single. They did what they wanted to do, and they wrote what they wanted to write. And it was amazing. And I was like, God, if I could only be in a band like that had that much diversity, I'd be stoked. And, it came to fruition.
Yes, almost like to have free will in a band. Is that something that is important to you?
It is. I mean, if it's something that I'm wholeheartedly involved with, yes, because I do a lot of session work as well, and I do whatever the client wants me to do, and I play whatever they want me to play. And that's just the nature of the business. And I understand that, I can play pocket stuff. I can, if they just want what they want, that's not a problem. The client is always right. But if it's something that I'm putting my whole heart into that I want to have a future with or do something long term, it has to be something that, completely interests me at the same time and gets my juices flowing. So, I like to have that different scale of being able to do, kind of like whatever you want to do to have all the different genres at play,
Yeah, different genres. Tell me about 7 Train. What was going on there, bro?
So with 7 Train, and it's funny because I listened to a little bit of your interview with Rod, and I kind of had a kind of a similar situation about 12 years ago. Okay. My mom had a major brain hemorrhage and a stroke, which left her disabled. And it kind of got to the point where I couldn't tour anymore because we didn't know how long she was going to live, Yeah. And thank God 12 years later, she's made progress and she was able to, kind of function to a certain degree. And now she's in the end stages of dementia, so we're kind of holding on by a thread day by day at this point. But it took me, during that time, it got to the point where I couldn't really tour. And I didn't really want to be away from her, because I'm the only child. And my stepdad is 96 years old, bless his heart, and he still thinks he can take care of her. And he tries and he does his best, but it's scary. It's a situation where they still live in their house together. I don't want to break them up. You know, I don't want to split them up and put her in a care home because I think that would kill both of them. You know, so
Yeah.
I want to try to keep them together as long as I can. So with Seven Train, I just want to give you a little background there. With Seven Train, they were a bunch of people that they were a bunch of friends, actually friends, that we got together and kind of put together some stuff so we could play locally, still put an album out, you know, and have that kind of creative bond between us. And we did that for a number of years, and you know, got some good press and got some good feedback on the album, and it was something good to do while I was, you know, at home, but I never really had the vision of really touring, you know, with it. And it really wasn't even my band. It was the guitar player's band, Eric Horton, you know, and so I just kind of did whatever I could, you know, to help out and, you know, help with production and help along with the songwriting and whatever I could do, and, you know, just give input. And, you know, it kind of ran its course, and they're still together and doing their thing, and I'm doing my thing. And, but it really was, it was a help creatively for me at the time because, you know, I had to kind of stay close to home, and they provided that for me. So I give them kudos for that.
Yeah, I'm proud of you, brother, for making that choice, you know, staying home with your mother. Not many musicians, well, I hope they make the same choice, but I know some might not have made that choice, you know?
Yeah. No, I know, and it was a difficult choice. You know, it was really hard because you have to put your career to the side of everything that you've worked for your entire life. But, you know, I look back at the sacrifices that my mom made for me, you know, when I was growing up. If it wasn't for everything that she did growing up, I wouldn't be a musician, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great stuff. Guys, we are live, 563-999-3029, Around the Kit Drum Talk Radio. Joe Maitoza. You know, you recorded on over 20 CDs, toured all over the world. What has always been, even in different genres, even being told what to play or having your own free will, what has always been the main recipe that you put into every song that you've played on?
You know, it's probably a combination of groove and chops. You know, I mean, I love the funk stuff. I love the meters. I love, like, anything that has a groove to it. I love Fishbone. You know, I love all that stuff. And I come from a primarily metal background. You know, I mean, that's what I grew up on when, you know, in the 80s, primarily. And then, you know, when I joined Spies, they got me all into the more funk stuff. And it was, it kind of evolves. Every band that I've been in, Salt and Pepper's me with a little more different type of influence, you know, and I've even done country albums, you know, and it's like, am I a huge country fan? No, but I learned something from it. And all those different variations and all those different situations kind of, you know, make this gumbo, so to speak, in my brain of, you know, all those different types of influences. So even though, you know, I'm a big, you know, Dean Castronova fan or a Tommy Aldridge fan or a Bonham fan or a Dennis Chambers fan or whatever the case may be, I try to, you know, take all those elements and put it together in my playing. And the other big aspect of it is, you know, I remember when I was younger, the first time I heard Van Halen, you could stick Alex Van Halen in any band and you would know it's Alex Van Halen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. He has that feel. He has that sound. He's got that snare sound. And I tried my hardest my entire life to try to emulate something like that, to try to get it to where, you know, when I played, even though I'm not as famous as him or, you know, don't have the same notoriety, as long as somebody heard my album, it would be my playing from album to album to album, it would be consistent and it would have some sort of, you know, sound that you could kind of tell it was my groove. It was a personal thing, right? Oh, so I always tried my hardest to create that. And, you know, I hope over the last, you know, 40 plus years I've been able to do something to that nature. But, it took a lot of work, and it takes a lot of chops and a lot of time to try to get something that's, you're comfortable in your wheelhouse and everybody recognizes it. And so when I play on something, they're like, oh, that sounds like, I know that snare. I recognize that snare, or I recognize that groove,
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're always asking drummers and people in life, what to do. I ask you, Joe Maitoza, what have you tried not to do in your career?
What not to do?
Yeah.
I try not to overplay for the song. And when we were discussing session work, I try to do whatever the song calls for. Do I love to play? Am I a chops, guy? Yes. I played in a Rush cover band for, 2 years. I love, double bass stuff. I love the chop stuff. But you got to know when to lay back. You got to know when just to groove. You got to know when to just play a 4/4 beat. Would I go crazy playing, AC/DC every night? Yeah, but that's AC/DC. I mean, look at them. Right. It works. That's great. And if I have to do a session like that, that's what I'll do. The main thing is you don't want to overplay for the song. You want to play whatever the song calls for, and that's like one of my biggest takeaways.
Yeah, we've had he's a very good friend of mine now. He's been on the show over 20 times, the legendary Kenny Aronoff. And I remember his first time on the show about 6 years ago. He says, Joe, there's 3 things you have to remember. You have to be a nice guy, you have to be on time, and you have to play on time. Because he says, there's some guys that blow me away that'll never get the gig because they're assholes. He said, be a good person, be on time, and play in time. And I think it's pretty true, Joe?
Yep, absolutely.
And that's why a guy like him gets all the work. And the guys who have these crazy chops at times, the best attitude, I guess it speaks for itself. We talked about so many things. We touched on so many different bases right now. Tell me about what you're doing right now as we speak. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you are in a band as we speak. Let us know what that band is.
Actually, it's a solo project that I kind of put together. So originally, before the pandemic hit, I was working on a solo album, and I was going to name it The Frequency Conspiracy. And I went into the studio, and I recorded a handful of songs, enough for about an album and a half's worth of songs. I wrote everything. I, played the drums. I played the guitar parts. I played the bass. I played the keyboards. And the songs were pretty much all together. I arranged it and produced it, and recorded it with a friend of mine. And, that was pretty much all ready to go, and then in the pipeline, and all I had to do was write lyrics for it and get it mixed. And the pandemic hit, and everybody, was like, how long is this going to last? It seems like it, at first it was 2 weeks, and then it was a month, and then it was 6 months, and I was like, well, I can't put this album out because I'm not going to be able to tour it. I'm not going to really be able to promote it. Right. So I had recorded 2 cover songs, which was Rock Candy by Montrose and Carry On Wayward Son by Kansas. And those were going to be like B-sides for the singles for the solo album. And so I reached out to Andrew Freeman and a couple other friends, and we released those 2 songs. And then I started talking to some other friends and some other people that I've wanted to work with over the years, and we're like, well, we should do this song, and what do you feel about doing this song? And then we're like, well, okay, this is enough to be a separate album. So, of course, during the shutdown, the pandemic, we ended up calling it Quarantine Covers. We had about 12 different guests on the album, and some amazing players, and I got to give props to them because they're all, just fantastic players. John Gallagher from Raven.
Yeah.
David Pistorius, who's Jocko's nephew, plays with Pat Travers right now. Amazing bass player. Jamie Scott, who is used to be in Taikato and the Vaughn Brothers.
Yeah.
This kid, I call him a kid. He's in his early 20s now, but Joshua Jones plays in a band called Poster Child. Amazing, phenomenal guitar player. Closest thing to Eddie Van Halen I've ever heard in my life. Christophe Godin plays with Metal Cartoon and The Prize. He's from France. Amazing, amazing guitar player. Of course, Andrew Freeman from Last in Line and Lynch Mob. A buddy of mine, Craig Soderbergh, who was in a band called Itis, probably did about 20 albums with Itis. He's an amazing guitar player, too. Jason Richardson, a.k.a. JMR, played in Year of the Dragon with some of the guys from Fishbone. Magellan Rodriguez played with Paul Diano, and my friend Joey McCaw, who played in a band called Brickbat that I used to manage, and Rick Skater, bass player from 24/7 Spies. So they all contributed to the album. They all kicked ass on it. I'm so proud of them. And the album came out on New Year's Day on this year, so it's available now on Amazon and iTunes.
Guys, check out a version. I did this song in my house last year. Christopher Cross, beautiful version, great version of Sailing. I loved Sailing, bro. You kicked ass on that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was
the video
great
just came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, great stuff, man. I can't thank you, brother, for this time. So anybody who wants to come check you out, website, Facebook page, gigs, where are you going to be, brother?
You can find me all over Facebook, Joel Maitoza, on Facebook, or Frequency Conspiracy. I'm on Reverb Nation. Like I said, the album's out, so you can listen to it. It's available on. You can listen to it on YouTube as well. It's on iTunes. It's on Amazon. All streaming platforms. Check it out. Hope you pick it up. Hope you dig it.
Joe Maitoza from Joe Gansas. I appreciate it. I love your story. I love the passion. If it's okay, I'd love to contact you in the future. Maybe 6-7 months, you come back on the show and we see what you're up to.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that.
Guys, Joe Maitoza. Joe, thanks so much, man, and I'll be in touch, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, brother.
Great. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Okay, have a great night.
You too. Take care.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guys, check out his cover stuff. Carry On was great. Sailing was so good. I love what they did there to Sailing. Joe Maitoza, Facebook and all the avenues, all the social medias. Joe Maitoza. Let's